Good morning, everyone. My name's Jennifer Walinga, and I'm a professor in the School of Communication and Culture at Royal Roads University. Welcome to our webinar series, Sport, Leadership, and Social Change, where this is a bit of a harkening back to an episode about excellence in community sport and a bonus reel with Sylvain Croteau, who's the Director General de Sport Aid in Quebec City. And I'll introduce Sylvain shortly, but I wanted to first start with always acknowledging the land that we're operating on and I'm coming to you from. We are on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen and Cossepsin First Nations. And very important to Royal Roads that we acknowledge this because we are, of course, an educational institution, and we feel that our job really is to help with the indigenization of our country and to acknowledge the harms in the past. Even though we are not directly responsible for inflicting them, we are responsible for bringing our cultural structures, processes, and behaviors into greater alignment with the respect that we have for citizens in our community. I want to introduce Sport Aid. It is an innovative approach to addressing the problems of abuse that we're experiencing in sport in Canada and, of course, internationally as well. But we have unique challenges that we're facing in our country. And I want to congratulate this trio of Ghislain Dumont, Sylvain Croteau, and Sylvie Perron for coming up with the idea of diving in and offering service to those in our sport community. Sylvain joins me today, and I just wanted to give a little background on the organization before we dive into our conversation. You can check out their website, of course, but I love the fact that they're here to support and collaborate with stakeholders of all kinds across the sports sector. They're all about informing and raising awareness about abuse in sport, but also positive and quality and constructive sport approaches, processes, and structures. They're here to assist and guide athletes and all those in the sporting world, and in particular, support the organizations that are there to create those environments in which we all hope to enjoy sport. And I saw that one of the values of the organization is pleasure, joy, remembering that what we're here to do in sport is actually enjoy ourselves and feel the beauty of that experience of sport. So welcome to Sylvain. We'll ask him, of course, to introduce himself a little bit more through the lens of sport. And I always like to start with that, why sport for you? What is your journey into sport, and why do you remain committed to sport? I mean, that's your role in the world of work professionally as well. Why are you focusing so intently on sport?
Hello, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's always a pleasure for us to have the opportunity to speak about the Sport Aid, our initiative. So I'm really grateful that you invited me on your podcast. To answer your first question, I would say that from a very young age, I've always been interested in sports. First, it was professional sports, ice hockey. Then I got involved in different sports: hockey, baseball, figure skating, archery, boxing, and then today, as the father of three young boys who are playing basketball. For me, I would say that sports has always been important. It's important for me to support the sport ecosystem because it is a great place to promote, favor the development of our young people who can socialize, develop athletic skills, develop life skills. So it's important to support sports for me since day one.
Right. Oh, I love it so much too. And I think when we've had these positive experiences, or we watch our kids have great experiences, right? Tell me a little more about what you mean by life skills. We talk a lot about that. But what are you seeing, or what have you experienced? What have you seen with your children as well, where you see them really developing physically, but also in other ways?
Yeah, it's important for me. It's important for Sport Aid, life skills, because at first we too often are doing the mistake to see our athletes as first and foremost athletes, but first and foremost they are human beings, and sports is a very good place to develop life skills that can be implemented in their other activities in their life or their day life. So it's important for us to use sports to develop these skills, then show them that these skills will serve them, will help them to be better citizens in their daily life.
Learn so much on the field that'll help you off. And when, I love that you have such a range of sport background too. I mean, archery is quite a unique sport, right? Can you
Yep.
tell me a bit about what those experiences personally, what have you taken from sport? And do you feel like you've carried some of that into your professional life?
Um, I would say the pleasure,
Mm.
the the brightness in the eyes of young people having fun doing their sports. Um, it is so refreshing to see this. So on the opposite side, when you realize that some athletes don't have fun playing their sports, it is always a deception for me. So there's a connection for me between pleasure and sportain because we want to make sure that every young athlete have fun. And chances are that if our young athletes are having fun, they will in time develop probably in the elite or but first they need to have fun at an early age. And if we um, make sure that the environment is always positive for them, we will keep them in sports because this is another concern that we have at Sportline. There are too many young athletes right now who are quitting sports. So we have to make sure that they have fun and they stay in sports. I often say when I'm meeting groups that I have three young boys and I have my main concern, the wish that I have is when they will get older and when they will have gray hairs, that they will play their sports even at 50 years old, and because it will show me that they had fun and they still have fun playing their sports.
Exactly. It's heartbreaking to see when we've had such positive memories. I mean, I think some of my very best memories are sport, and they're not always crossing the line first or, hitting that target and having that amazing, perfect, whatever
Yep.
performance. They're
Mm.
often the social aspects, right? Those hilarious times you have with your teammates. And it's so heartbreaking to watch. Increasingly, I find it's kind of shocking to me, because I don't think I had a zillion of the experiences I'm now witnessing for those that were
Mhm.
supporting have such negative memories, and to the point where they're actually turning away from sport. It is quite the tragedy when the possibilities are so huge. Can you tell us a bit about how you arrived at Sport Aid and with your colleagues? How did that come about? And obviously the crisis of abuse is motivating it, but tell us a little more about the history of that.
Do
So
you have a lot of time?
yes, we do. I have all day for you.
Now, and more seriously, I would summarize talking about the desire of a group of enthusiasts who wanted to make a difference in sport and initiate an important cultural change. You evoked in your introduction, Sylvie and Guinan, but we were then a group and we really wanted at that time to make a real difference in sports. I would also add that in the same period, the sports community began to realize that violence and unacceptable behavior um, were tarnishing the sporting experience of young athletes. In this regard, let's remember 2015 when six young skiers denounced the behavior of their coach. Um, this particular event, I would say, shocked the world and helped us raise um, awareness and promote collective um, mobilization, I would say, to change um, things and implement measures promoting sports, healthy and safe sport. And at that time, Sportaid had already begun its work by creating its organization, composing its board of directors, and things evolved quickly. And it was in 2017 that the government of Quebec and the Quebec sports community entrusted a first mandate to Sportaid, which was to develop and manage a listening, support, and guidance service available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is free, confidential, and bilingual. So that was the beginning. And since then, I would say that things have developed rapidly, really fast for our organization, which I think it is important to point out that Sportaid is totally independent, providing callers and organization wishing to do things with us. We are providing them the peace of mind that they need to use our services.
And why is it so important that you are independent? I mean, you've been really given the mandate by the government, but I understand, right? You personally, right? You're not associated with a university or with an organization that is a sport organization. So why is
I
that?
would say the first the main reason was to make sure that we would provide peace of mind to the callers. And with time, we now know, we are convinced that it was and it is still the good decision, because I would say nine out of times, 9 out of 10 times, people will ask us first question or next question, are you going to call my parents, my club, my federation, my coach? So callers are really concerned about the confidentiality and the peace of mind when they are contacting Spotlight. So the fact that we are independent provide them this peace of mind, and it is very important. And a few years ago, I had a discussion with a researcher in Netherlands, Tin Bertomen, and Tin told us that in her country, few years ago, they tried to launch services like Sportaid, and uh, it didn't succeed because the services were connected to the sports organization of the country. So people doubted about the peace of mind and the confidentiality of the exchanges that they had at that time with these services. So we are independent. It is very important to have this distance, I would say, with sports organization.
Yes, because there's that fear. And I mean, this is, I think,
Yep.
fundamentally as a researcher,
Fear is the good word. Yep.
and fear of the power over, right? There's too much power imbalance in the system where if they find out, they might determine the outcome of my career,
Yep.
my hopes and dreams. Yeah.
And sports, in French, we say sport est un petit monde. I would say sports is a little word in the sense that everybody knows everyone. There's always a chance that someone knows someone. So people have this fear. So it is very important for them when they are asking for help, when they are contacting us, that they can do it in total confidence.
Total confidence. Very difficult to do. You're right, in our small
Yep.
world. And it's a strength of our world in Canada. We're so big, and yet our community is quite tight and interconnected. So it could be a strength.
Yeah.
but it's so dangerous as well, because if someone gains power, everyone is now operating in a different way. I'll follow up with you and get the name of that Dutch researcher too, because I always like to attach the resources for people who are listening in or curious. And I know I wanted to highlight that you were brought to my attention by my friend Andrea Wools, who you'll know
Yeah.
from ViaSport in BC. And I think they're really modeling
Mm.
a lot of what they're doing after what you and your colleagues have demonstrated here. And I think that's why I invited you to the webinar. I really want to showcase some of these projects for the principles you're describing. So important that it's independent, so important that it's actually supported
Mhm.
and funded so it can be free for everyone.
There's and if you want to know more, there's a reference on our website. We have a blog section, and we have it was in the beginning of Sportide, but we had an interview with Tin Vertoman, and she was in this interview. She spoke about the unicity of Sportide and the model that we have, and she also in this article. Um, I'm not wrong, she was talking about this experience, negative experience in her country.
And we're struggling with it in Canada nationally, right? With
Yep.
trying to tease apart these organizations so that they're not too interconnected in a way that is power imbalanced and therefore not independent. Okay, good to hear more about the history. And so, but the three of you came together. How did you find each other? How did that happen? Just interested.
uh, Coincidences. First, I met Guylaine because I heard her on a radio show, and she was giving an interview about a role as a spokesperson for a volleyball tournament, because Dylan was a very, very good volleyball player. I heard her on the radio show, and I thought to myself, I think that she had problem before. I didn't know her at all. Then I tried to find her. I found her. I met her, and I wanted to write her story, and she wasn't interested to have a book about her story. And then I learned her story, experiencing violences in her sport, and I told her, "Why didn't you ask for help?" And her answer was, there's no help for athletes um, having difficulties, having experiencing violence in sports. I was very surprised because even though I had been in sports for many years, like I haven't experienced anything negative, I thought that services were existing to help people in these situations. But with Guylaine, I learned that there were not. So I told her, I think that we should create something, so sorry. And then someone else told us, you should meet Sylvie Parent. And then we met Sylvie and we told her about our vision, the, 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 the goal that we had to maybe someday create something being called Sportaid, aiming to support athletes. The thing I didn't know when we met Sylvie, a year before, Sylvie was in the United Kingdom to um, study a model, an organization there being called Child Protection in Sports Unit. And she was mandated by the government of Quebec to study this organization and to make recommendations to the Quebec government. But we didn't know that when we met her. So we met her, we shown her our vision of Sportide, and then she told us, your vision and my recommendations are the same. So I think that we should work together. And this is when we decided to unite our strengths to create Sportide. And then from then um, we found other people being motivated by the same objective, same goal to provide safe sports environment in Quebec.
It's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
how, serendipitous and purposeful. And yeah, it's quite interesting how those things work out. And the name, I mean, it's so simple but profound. Can you tell us about the
Yeah.
generation of
This, this is something personal. I was working with Guylaine. We were developing, we were dreaming of what would be Sportide, but at that time, there was no name yet. And one afternoon, I was sitting on the balcony with the oldest of my son, and I was telling him about the fact that we were developing an organization that would um, work in safe sports. And out of nowhere, he told me, Sportide. As simply as that. Told me that. So I called Dylan, I called Sylvie, and I told them, how about Sportide? And 7 years later, we're still talking about Sportide.
I love it.
Yep.
And because, I've taught kids for many, many years as well. And I always say they're the ones that have all the answers, right? If we just listen a little more. Wonderful, beautiful. Thank you for the story. And I'm sure there's much more to the story, but it's so inspiring for others to reach out, follow your heart, connect
Yep.
with those and listen and talk to people about things, because all these wonderful insights will be generated. Wonderful. So what are you most proud of accomplishing so far?
There are many things. But first, I would say that my greatest pride is to have put in place a highly qualified team whose expertise is constantly requested by the stakeholders in our sports ecosystem. With the result that Sportide has succeeded in establishing itself as the organization providing support and assistance, guidance um, in terms of healthy and safe sports in Quebec. In this regard, I must say that the figures since our beginning prove us right, because we have recorded significant increases linked to our various services. For example, our helpline went from an average of 300 to 400 interventions. I think we can say interventions.
Yes.
Per year, to more than 1,000 last year.
Wow.
Yeah. Our awareness and education workshops have increased from around 40 per year to more than 120 last year. While the media requests have increased from around 70 to 80 a year to nearly 150 in the last year. So these figures tell a lot. And finally, I would say that the numerous requests outside Quebec, where we are called to present our approach, which is, we say that our approach is global, positive, sustainable, and responsible. Last week, for instance, I was on Safe Sports Working Committee in France with the Council of Europe. Next February, I will be presenting at the next Play the Game conference in Norway. So the work that has been done by Spotlight until now um, is renewed outside. We can say renewed outside Quebec, and the fact that we have increasing requests from Quebec um, tells a lot.
What success, and I love exactly. I mean, we learn that from sport, don't we? Right?
Yep.
Constant feedback,
Yeah.
accountable, measuring your success. And I'm so happy it's just like this, right? I reached out because I want to showcase, we want to learn. So important to leverage what's working as well as teasing apart what's not. Wonderful, thank you. And I wanted to ask a bit about, what do you think makes you, you've talked about what's made you unique and effective, the principles that are guiding you. I see the values that are also underpinning what you're doing, the importance of independence, you're sharing. I mean, you must be so busy. I know you are, because you're tough to get in hold of, but you must have other people working now with you as well. It's not just a one-man show.
No.
That must be challenging to ensure. How do you ensure that the the principles are infusing, they're embedded in everybody that's working with you? How do you manage
that? You said something before about heart. I put every time I hired someone, I always make sure that this is the good person for our organization. You could say that all managers do the same, but I really want to make sure that there's a connection, that the people we hire work for Spotlight, for and with the sports community, and not for themselves. It is really important. So we don't have when we are meeting people to eventually hire them, we don't have the classic interviews. And people are always surprised when we ask them for interviews, because it is really, how do you say that? Unofficial, it's not the right word.
Or informal?
Yeah, informal, yeah. I really want to feel them. And this is a discussion. I am not asking many questions. I really want to feel them, and I really want them to feel us. I always tell them that this is like a couple. We have a first meeting, and before we will get married, I want to know you, and I want you to know us. And I want to make sure that there's a fit. It is as simply as that. And some people would say it's not quite naive as an approach, but until now, it worked. So I tend to say that we really have to be able to feel the people you're going to work with. You really need people who will be oriented to people and not to themselves.
I think it would be great to bottle that up, to capture that. And I think we tend to think it's intangible, that it's something we can't pin down, but we can. Absolutely, because you're looking for that connection, feeling the values are aligned, and we can see those values in a great deal of things, what we say, what we do, the actions, how we hold ourselves, how we respond, the structures that we surround ourselves with. So
Mm.
that's culture. And I love hearing that that's what you're basing your decisions on. I think we could make it more concrete for sure. Something that I work on in my research. So, we've had a big announcement where from Carla Qualtrough about the commission that's been struck to examine, and I think they probably shy away from the word investigate, but examine and learn from. But you can also see some other measures are being taken alongside of that, right? So OSIC will be removed from SDRCC for independence. Good,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we have to keep working on that aspect of it where we're kind of cleaning up sport. But how do you feel in general about the measures that have been announced, and do they align with the goals of sport aid?
Quite positive. Um, quite positive about the announcement. It's recent. I think that time will tell. Um, the willingness, la volonté, the willingness shown by Mrs. Qualtrough is encouraging. But time will tell. If we take a look on the past, there were some measures announced before, I would say, before Pascal Saint-Onge, way before her. And there are not much things that have changed before Madame Saint-Onge. Madame Saint-Onge was very promising. She did very good thing. Now we work with Ms. Qualtrough, and I am hoping that we are um, keep moving forward. But I'm quite positive about what we heard this week.
Because what do you see from your perspective and in your environment? And I mean, you're experiencing safe sport challenges globally now too. You're visiting all sorts of countries and talking to different people in different settings. And from your perspective, so what do you think we should be focusing on most intently right now?
The first thing I think is we have to put much emphasis on education. We have to educate everyone, every stakeholder. I think that we should stop to put the emphasis only on coaches.
Mm.
We have problems with some coaches, not all coaches. This is very important to specify because much of the coaches are very good. Some of them are a problem, but I would say that we need to work every stakeholders in the sports system, meaning young athletes themselves, their parents, coaches, the administrators, the volunteers. We all need to take part in this change of culture. This is a responsibility that we share, that we must share. This is not the this is not the only responsibility of the coaches or the athletes or the administrators. We are all concerned. We all have something to do to change the sports culture.
Love that. Really. I'm a rower, and in a rowing boat, you can't fix it alone. You can't fix the balance all by yourself. It all depends on everybody and together. And so finding that kind of common threads that everybody can connect to will be helpful. All
Yeah,
right.
and when I say this, it is directly connected to our approach. We don't have at Sportaid the magic recipe. Uh, on a daily basis, we are inspired by the Krug ecological model, which ensure us that we daily work by considering all the stakeholders in our ecosystem, ensuring that we have a direct impact on risk factors while promoting protective factors. Um, for instance, and more concretely, we at Sportide are developing approaches providing tools, activities, interventions aimed at everyone, both athletes, their coaches, parents, volunteers, officials, administrators, and the general public. They are also part of the solution if we really want to change things. Yeah.
Yeah, because the general public, are they going to stand by and just watch? Are they going to intervene if there's something offside? Are they going to cheer for fighting in hockey?
Yep.
Those kind of things, right? The market is really determining a lot in sport in Canada. I want to ask you two things. So can you tell me more about risk factors and protective factors? And then I'll ask you the next thing, a little more about education. But what do you mean by those things?
The risk factors are the conditions in which the athletes evolve. The risk factors could be what example could I? Evolving in an organization, being only focused on winning at all costs, evolving with a coach, an organization, administrators aiming to win at all costs. That could be a risk factor. An organ. Oh, sorry, you would.
Go ahead, just so you don't feel so much pressure to come up with more, but that's a good one to start with. And what would protect against that? What's some protective factors that can be added to the environment to protect against it?
But it would be to act in prevention and educate this organization, the coaches, their administrators, the young athletes, the parents, that winning at all costs has a cost. So it would be to animate activities, to discuss with them, to provide them tools to help them realize that consequences for winning at all costs are really important. And we have studies that show that if you're living in an environment where winning at all costs is the main value, you're asking for trouble for a long time, in short time, but also for people for the worst cases all their lives. So it could be to have some activities to discuss with them, to show them the consequences. That would be an example. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, it's clear. And I listened to Eric McIntosh and Alison Doherty combine to do a study on that hyper focus on the one thing. It's too much of a good thing, so there's nothing wrong with wanting to win, but when we only focus on that, right, then we have a problem.
No, this is important. This is something we keep saying at Sportide. We're not against winning. We're not against performances, but we are against winning and performances at all costs, because at the end, there's a cost.
We have a group of us did a study on that and generated this graph to show, what the costs or the benefits that you can win
Mhm.
benefits. There are wonderful, like you talked about at the beginning, so many benefits that can be
Yep.
gained as you're on the journey to try to achieve excellence. And where do you see then across Canada, if I can be so bold, but even within your own environment provincially, but where do you see the biggest levers for safeguarding sport? Do you think it's all about education, or are there other levers that we could be pulling on to improve?
I think that first we should invest massively in sports right now. It is uh, it is really important because we all know that in the sports ecosystem, organizations are lacking human resources, are lacking budget, are lacking expertise. So if we don't provide them what they need to take care of their communities, we will never succeed. We have to invest massively in our sports organization. Um, and then we have to act in education, prevention, because if we really want to change things and have a long-term effect, there's no other choice. We have to equip people, we have to educate them, we have to work with them. So it is really important to meet and work with all the stakeholders in the sports ecosystem. It begins with the administrators. We have to make them realize that they are accountable, responsible for the people they are hiring and the people they keep in their organization. Coaches, we have to make them realize that sometimes when they want to win at all costs, they take shortcuts that have impacts and consequences on our athletes. Um, we have to speak and educate our young athletes to make them able to recognize what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, the importance for them to be able and to don't be shy if they need help, on the importance to recognize that they need help, that they should ask help, that there are services for them. We also have to speak with parents because there are some parents, it's unfortunate, but there are some parents accepting things because they are focusing on the promised land for their kids. And these stories are very sad. These parents who are accepting things, hoping that their kids will keep uh, their playing time, that they will um, have maybe better chance to do the provincial team or the national team or to go to the NHL. So we have to speak with everyone. We have to speak with the volunteers in our organization during events because they can also see things that are in our conception of sports that are normalized, banalized. Can we say banalized? Um, we accept things in sports that outside sports would not be accepted. So even the volunteers, the general public, they are part of the solution because if they can recognize some situations that are not acceptable, even in sports, so they will be able to um, help our athletes to identify these situations, help these athletes telling them about the services, the consequences. So it is important to speak to everyone in the sports ecosystem.
You mentioned accountability and
Yep.
responsibility, and I think it ties in with this idea that everybody is responsible. And
Yep.
it's, I wanted to touch too on, that my kid. I see that so often, and it's helping people have a bigger perspective that it's all kids or all of sport, or our future in Canada of sport. We have to think broadly and not just sort of that selfishness that you mentioned when you're trying to find a fit with people who work with you too. It can't be about you, it has to be about the bigger picture, which is rewarding for you. Like, it always feeds back, right? And is valuable. But how do we either expand that perspective and help people take greater responsibility for the whole instead of their own little corner?
I think that we really need to bring the organization, the administrators, the managers to realize that most of the time, when it's question of safe sports, they are reacting. They are not acting. They are reacting to situation. And if they really want to be part of a change, and if they really want to make a big change in sports and have an impact, a long-term impact, they have to change their mindset. So we have to equip the organizations and our stakeholders to and empower them to make sure that safe sports is on everybody's agenda on a daily basis, not only when they are facing a problem. This is the first step. But to do this, I'll repeat myself, we must invest massively in this regard because our organization, they don't have the budgets, they don't have the human resources, and they don't have the expertise. So if we want them to stop acting in the crisis mode, we have to equip them to act and not react.
Yeah, and unfortunately, now we've devoted 15 million to a commission, which is very reactive, and we're not really seeing. And of course, the public is starting to lose its tarnish. Sport is tarnished, sort of losing
Yep.
faith. So maybe they might not get
And
behind. It's just
and
such a cycle.
this is something really sad, realizing that sports, I would say since at least a couple of years, sports don't have a very good reputation. We hear very often we hear parents saying, "Oh, I will not send my kids in sports." Sports is a good place to be for our kids, but we have to make sure that it is a good place to be for them. So we have really, really a good job to do, and we also have to, as a society, I think that we have to question the relation that we have with sports. I think that to we have to stop idealizing sports. We, as a society, are accepting too many things in sports because sports is sports, because sports is the promised land for many people. Sports is possible because we have human beings doing sports. So I think that we have to switch our mindset. We have to take care of human being doing sports. instead of taking care of sports, we have to take care first of our human beings doing sport. This is, for us at Sportaid, the main concern that we have.
And this feels like a real theme for our conversation, that sport has become quite selfish. It really has become about the promised land for the chosen few, and it's really coming back on us, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, and instead of for the intrinsic value you and I experienced when it was amateur, and it's kind of a tragedy. But how do you think we can recover? Do you have hope?
Yes, yes, but we have to work in a concrete manner. Is it
Yes,
clear? Like, yeah.
concrete.
Yeah, we have to be more concrete. We have to. This is why I told earlier, time will tell regarding the Minister Qualter announced this week. Time will tell. But we have, because the other thing that it is important to say, people don't always realize this, but Canada and Quebec, most particularly, we are seen as a leader when it's question of safe sports. There are many things to do, but once I said that, Canada and Quebec are seen as leaders as when we speak about safe sports. That being said, we cannot sit on our hands. There are much work to do, and we have to work together. And I think it's possible, but we have to invest, we have to show vision, and we also have to be, it will find it strange what I will say, but we also have to be patient in a way, because it is when we are facing so important challenges, we sometimes have the reflex to be in emergency solution, but I think that even though the challenge is important, I think that we have to do this with vision and patience. But vision and patience with massive investments and real willingness, and we really need to work with everybody. It is really important to work with all the stakeholders. It is not only about the victims, and it is not only about the coaches. It is not only about the administrators. It's about everyone being involved in the sports ecosystem.
I do a lot of work in the area of problem solving, and there's a phrase around really truly insightful solutions take time.
Yep.
Complexity. So involving everyone, and don't be afraid to be complex in how you look at the problem, but sit with the problem, be patient with it, so that you arrive at the true insight instead of throwing solutions too quickly or rushing ahead. And we can see that with some of the initiatives, right? OSIC has kind of been rushed, and now they're having to back and change a little bit and figure it out. And I think also I've heard people talk about the need for us to really sit with ourselves as a country, and like you said, figure out our relationship with sport, because we tend to also copy, right? Well, they're doing, so we'll do that too. And there are some wonderful, we talk lots about the Norwegian program and approach to sport, but that's also Norway. It's a different country. So how can we learn from it, but also make it something very uniquely Canadian. Is there, do you have something to say about that? You know, what do you think would help us as Canadians, or what would make it a Canadian sports system very uniquely Canadian?
Um, I I repeat myself and to the risk to sound um, basic, but I think that we have to come back to human values. Human values, life skills can cope with performance, fun, pleasure, sports in the same sentence. It is possible. There are there are too many people. This is it okay to say that way, but there are there are this people who are thinking that pleasure, life skills, respect does not do not fit. These values do not fit with performance, sports. Uh, at Sportide, we think that these values can cope, and we are conducting a project right now with the Montreal Canadiens and Hockey Quebec, the Ice Hockey Federation, and our program is being called Moi j'embarque. I would say in English something like I jumped in, or and our program is based on life skills. We're using hockey, and we are using Jean Béliveau as the captain of the captain to meet people and talk with them about life skills in hockey, in sports, but in their day life also. Um, and it works, and it really works. So we are a country, answering to your question, what should we do as Canada in sports? This is a country where it is, we are lucky to live in Canada. There are places in the world which is not where people don't have the same chance as we do. But I think that our sports should be based on human being, on life skill, on respect, inclusion, um, teamwork, um, resiliency. Can we say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that these values have their place in sports, and I think that it should be the the basis of our sports system, and that these values could help us take the right decision to influence the rest of the story in safe sports environment, and to make sure that we have a long-term impact.
I think you've really described Canada so well. I mean, you think about us just as a country, it's about resiliency. I mean, it's the distance, the geography, the intensity of the landscape, the cold, the mountains, the lots of ocean, lots of coast, right? And then the diversity and distance, the challenges that poses for us, and how do we still be inclusive? Yet we've succeeded. We're still incredibly welcoming to immigrants. I mean, for the most part, and and very open with our borders, et cetera. So I think, man, it wouldn't, and that probably is reflected in our top teams in Canada. I bet you if we were to examine what have been the most successful teams in Canada, they probably represent resiliency, diversity, and love, you know, for and safety, right?
Yep.
It's such a safe country generally in comparison to others. Beautiful.
Yeah, and we don't say this. We don't say we don't promote such a vision enough, I think. People are afraid to say and to promote such a vision when we have a discussion regarding sports. I always say when I'm meeting people, when I'm meeting organization, I don't think that we live at Sportaid in a teddy bear vision. We think it's possible. And when I said earlier that we are doing this right now with the Montreal Canadiens, which is a professional sports organization, it is not a local club. It is a professional sports organization believing that it is possible to change things, talking about life skills. So I am hoping and I think that we can do this, but this is a very good example about the patience that we will need because speaking that way, I think that I'm sure, not I think, I'm sure that there are some people that will hear this and say, oh boy, Mr. Croteau, you have big hopes, but I don't think that it's possible in sports. Yes, it's possible.
Let's stop there because I agree. We just have to keep linking arms and working for it, right?
Yeah.
And being proud of who we are and what we have to offer, doing our thing our way.
Yeah.
And I love the dream of sport that you have for our country. And I think we need to keep inviting people to join in that dream, that vision. All right. All the best to you. So much. So proud of what you're doing. So grateful for what you're doing. And I really appreciate you spending this time with me. And I'll do my best to promote the work that you're doing